Hi everyone, today we're going to be making Rabbokki, which is a variation of Tteokbokki. And if you don't know what Tteokbokki is, it is actually a spicy rice cake. And I thought before explaining Rabbokki, it'd be better to kind of talk about Tteokbokki and especially all the variations in Korea for this dish. So I thought I'd start off with the basic tteokbokki set, I guess you can say, or what you'll typically see. So a lot of times in Korea, they used to sell this in the streets a lot. You still can see it, but it's becoming a little bit rare now to find these street vendors, unless you go to certain areas where they sell it, kind of like with a bunch of other street foods. But you'll normally have some fixings that you can put inside the tteokbokki. And so tteokbokki itself is tteok means rice cake in Korea, but there's two different types of tteok. There's what we call miltteok or milgaru tteok, which is made from flour, and then there's saltteok, which is actually made from sweet rice. Now the biggest difference between the miltteok and the saltteok is actually the texture of the rice cake itself. So when you're eating miltteok, you're actually going to get more chewiness because it does contain gluten, while if you're eating saltteok, it's actually more softer. And this is, there's a huge divide depend on people about do you use saltteok or miltteok, and it's a preference, and most people stick to one preference or the other. I personally like the miltteok or the flour-based tteok better just because I do like the chewiness of the rice cake. But I know some people who have a problem with the texture of it, so they might prefer something that's a little bit more softer, which would be the saltteok. And depending on which one you use, your tteokbokki might get a little bit more cloudy, but there's minor difference in that. The biggest thing is really just about texture. So here's an example of tteokbokki but with ramen. So this is called Rabbokki, where you put the ramen noodles in, and on the side you have some blood sausages, and typically you can use, you can eat it with blood sausage, fried dumplings, or we call it yaki gyoza sometimes, or mandu, and or you can actually put in other things that you want in there. So there's a variety of fixings that you can put in. For example, this is actually with a side of dried strawberries, and this was because they were a part of a strawberry festival. So in April they have a strawberry festival buffets where everything is strawberry themed. And in this case, this was at the Shinna Hotel, and we were eating tteokbokki, and you actually add in some strawberry. And so my guess is that the sweetener, instead of using sugar, they probably use a little bit of like strawberry syrup to get the sweetness in and get a little bit more fruit notes into it. So that is another example. And this is called tteokbokki, and tteokbokki is actually like a fried rice cake on a skewer that they put the red sauce on. And the red sauce actually consistent of the chili paste, sugar, and usually ketchup. And then after you fry it, they kind of slather on the sauce, and it's a variation of a tteokbokki in a way. And this is called girum tteokbokki, where it's kind of in between the tteokbokki and the tteokbokki. And what it is that you fry the sauce as well. So in like a kind of a pool of oil, you put in the chili paste and you kind of like fry the paste itself. Then you put in the actual rice cake, and then you fry it all together. And so that's why it's called girum tteokbokki. And if you're in Seoul, there's actually a whole alley, or I guess a street dedicated to tteokbokki, and it's in the area of Sindangdong, where they call it Toppoki town, where this whole street is just all Sindangdong style tteokbokki. And Sindangdong style tteokbokki is very interesting because it's almost like a hot pot style tteokbokki. And the reason why it's kind of unique is that what they use is actually chunjang, which is like a fermented soybean paste, to kind of give a little bit more umami flavor and a little bit more funkiness. And they put a lot of other fixings in it. And I actually went to what they call the original called Rabbokki Tteokbokki, where it was actually kind of known to have started this kind of craze for this tteokbokki in this area. And I thought it would be kind of like weird just because I'm not a big fan of the fermented soybean, but you can barely taste the soybean itself, but it just adds a great depth to the flavor. There are other variations to tteokbokki, like carbonara tteokbokki or seafood tteokbokki, but at this point I thought that I just go ahead with the how to make a Rabbokki. As you can see here, the ingredients are very simple. And if you want to just make normal tteokbokki, it'd be the same step except you don't use the ramen. So we're gonna start off by cutting a quarter of an onion. I just had this laying around, so I thought I'd just use the remainder of the onion instead of cutting a new onion. And as you can see, I'm trying to cut it very thinly because I do want it to cook pretty quickly. And then we're gonna dice the green onion very small. The green part, I'm actually gonna make it into longer strips, and the white part and then the light green part, I'm gonna dice it. I didn't have the flour-based rice cake, so I was actually using leftover rice cake that I had from making another dish called Tteokbokki, which is another variation where you don't actually use any spices and it's just soy sauce based tteokbokki. For rice-based tteokbokki, you want to put the rice in later because it is very soft already, that you don't want it to cook too much because it will swell too much. And here we're going to be cutting fish cake, and this is called Oden. So it's a fried fish cake, and they make it into like very thin sheets, and so we're going to make some of them into triangles, and then the rest we're going to make into rectangular shapes. The triangles is really just for kind of, like an added flair to the tteokbokki, so it kind of looks nicer, but I kind of like eating the rectangular shapes better because they're a little more manageable size to eat. And here are the ingredients for the sauce. But I do want to point out that the soy sauce is actually called 국간장, or soy sauce for soup, and it's actually going to yield a less darker color because it's actually more sodium that you only use a little bit, so you don't actually discolor the food. So for the dashi, I'm just going to use a pre-packaged dashi pack, and as you can see, it includes all these different ingredients in here, which is nice because if not, you're gonna have to put in individual things like the kombu, and then maybe dried shrimp or dried anchovies, and then maybe the onion peels and etc. But this includes all of that, and you just drop one package in. So after letting the water boil and let the dashi pack kind of steep in it for a little while, we're gonna actually add in the fish cakes. Because the fish cake is oily and it actually does add a lot to the broth itself, so I actually use it kind of as a broth starter as well. And we are going to add in the ramen, and then we're going to actually use the packets, but I'm only going to use a little bit of the packet for the seasoning itself. So this is kind of where the Rabbokki becomes a little different from tteokbokki, is that you do use the ramen soup flavor packet a little bit, and in this case I poured a little more than I wanted to, and so, which is okay. Some people like it better, so what you can do actually is use a little bit less soy sauce later on, and so that it doesn't become too salty. And then we're going to add in the chili peppers and also the sugar. You're going to see a lot of other recipes where they use chili paste, but the more chili paste you use, the less clean the flavor is, and it's gonna kind of leave a little bit of astringency in your mouth. So I actually like the very clean flavor of just using only chili flakes. And so this is kind of a preference, and usually they would maybe put a spoon or two of the chili paste in and then the rest the powder. But in this case I didn't want to do that. I actually like this very simple version, and it's actually to show you how easy tteokbokki is, because if you have soy sauce, sugar, and chili powder, that's pretty much all you need for the very basic tteokbokki sauce. And then if you want to make it a little more depth and flavor, you just add in the dashi. And so we're gonna give it a little bit of a taste test by drinking the soup to see if it's, you know, the right amount. And I can tell that it's pretty good, but I wanted to add a little bit more umami and flavor. So you add in the soy sauce, but it wasn't actually meant for seasoning because it was actually perfect as is. So this was just to give that little bit more depth of flavor by giving a little scent of the soy sauce. And I also noticed that I need a little more sugar after I tasted it, so I will be adjusting this a little bit to make it a little bit on the sweeter side by putting in about another teaspoon of sugar. And now it is all ready, so I'm just going to finish it off with some green onions and some roasted sesame seeds for a little bit of a garnish. And that is it. And as you can see, it's very simple to make rabbokki. I think I finished all this within about 15 minutes from start to finish, from cutting the veggies into, you know, finishing and eating. And so here's a little portion that I just poured out for me to eat. This is going to be my dinner. And then here are some images of the final product, and I'm actually going to include another image of the Rabbokki that I made a few years ago at a friend's house. She had a last minute guest come over, so she needed help cooking some dishes, so we kind of came up with this really quickly, and we kind of made it like a street food night kind of party. I can go on and on about tteokbokki, but I thought I would just keep this kind of relatively short as possible, but kind of give a little more background about what tteokbokki is and how it can be done with variations like rabbokki here. And I actually did make another dish called 궁중 tteokbokki, which is actually a soy sauce based rice cake for people who don't like it spicy. And you use bulgogi to actually make it kind of sweet also. But that will actually be part of the bulgogi series video that I'm actually going to be making very soon. So please look out for that video, and please subscribe to my channel and be on the lookout for more videos related to cooking. And if you have any dishes, Korean or any, you know, dish in general that you like to kind of learn how to cook, you know, just leave it in the comments, and I'll try to, you know, make a video for you on how to make that food, or, you know, kind of maybe some history behind certain foods.